I whakarukuruku ia, I whakariki ia. E whiorere te o te wahine o te wai ki tau ni ki tau a wā, te hei mauri ora. A tiki te wiki kamati tēnei wā, a tā mātou a tama, a tūtaka, e tama, a hai ki te kainga te tangata, a hai ki tā whitiri, a ki tā whitiro, ki tā whiti pāmā tō te ārei. A matatu he tētē kura, a maira he tētē kura, a nā ki rato i tēnā mea ka whanako ākitea. Rui au ki te aotanga te kinitanga i tēnei wā, he piko e taniwha, a he piko e taniwha, a he piko e kuini hau, a nā wai hono i te pō, no ana ki te auri o ngā mātou tīpuna, a rire hau, hau mārire. Wā kia koe, a te tāputa, o tai e tēnei rangi. Inui kia koe ko tai ki tēnei wāhi o te papa. Tā mātou honore, te hara mai, te rongo ki tō Kōrero, a tō mātauranga i roto i Rotorua, te rua o te Whakairo. Ko tā mātou whakapapa i roto i tēnei whare, ka haere au ki Hinewa, o Hinewa, ka moe ia, te rangi hauhiri, te tuatoru, o Arawa, ka puta mai, ko te rangi hauhiri, ka nō rātou i roto i tēnei mahi, ko rangi hauhiri, te mokotona, o Tamakore, ka tūtonu, te Whakairo o Tamakore i roto i tēnei whare. Ka roto i tēnā te hononga, tā mā te whare Whakairo, ki Tamakore, i Hinewa, te puhi o tēnei whina, roto i tēnā, nau maharamai ki te papa, te tauranga moana, reira tēnā koutou, katoa, tēnā koutou, te rara moana.
Whakariki ko te whakariki, ko mai whakakiki, ko mai ki a tata, kia e mai ki hūri, te pai ko a haumai tawhiti, haumai tawhiti, i tūrani, ko te mai a te kapua, ka mai a tama te kapua, e tōna Hawaii, ua rima, anu tō taku, ka puta mai, ka huma anu mai, tōna mātaka. Ngā puri a whare ki te hirau, nā ni ki tuki tō mai. Ki reira, e takuto ana ai, te waka o te aro. E tawai o tau waka, ngā roto. Te taha tokerau o te roto iti a ka huma, i hinga. I tiku a koe hau, ke rei. A reira, te kōkako peke where o te wahatu o te maunga, o ta whaura pēr. Ko hoho ai toku mara, e tākina toku anu grant toku ino. Thank you. Appreciate that, kōrero, that meaning. Koutou ko taito, koutou tina anu mai, te whakahapa i tēnei kaupapa, koutou, kia ora tātou. There's a saying, a whakatauki, ko te whao te kōrero, ko te kōrero te whao. Ko te kōrero te toki, toki te kōrero. It's all about the chisel doing the talking, the toki, the axe doing the talking, and not the carver doing the talking. And all of a sudden, carvers get dragged on in front of crowds. So when Jules contacted, I thought to myself, may as well do it. And because what do I think? What do I carve? And it started to push me into this thing about where I'm at in what I do after 50 years of carving. There's so much to unpack and so much to think about, and that we don't, we just do. We just use the file, we use the talking, and we just do. So these sort of things are a way to actually, for me, to unpack what I do and think about it. And that next week there's going to be a Tāmoko conference that Tihini and asked me to speak at that. And so it's forcing me to think about my practice right alongside Tāmoko and so I've just thrown together, I pinched them off the internet. I've had a few shitty photos that I've made, and I've put them together into some sort of semblance for images for us to talk to Kōrero, to discuss. And maybe rather than just asking for questions at the end of this, that if you think of something while we're going through it, that might help stimulate the Kōrero and more a better way that will connect with you guys. So, can I call you? The Father Kōrero.
Yeah, that's it.
Why did it start at here, huh?
You said
just
there. Hang on. We probably just have to review. We're probably looking at it and forgot. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So this I don't know, was thing I did on an old PowerPoint that I just cut and pasted and put into this. I thought it might be an interesting way to show my lineage in the carving and how I got to learn from the people before me. So you know, it's just pretty self-explanatory going through all the masters. Amo wero tēnei wai te neke kapua, eri ha kapua, hone, te pau, pai, and then myself. One wise man said is that any accolades you get have been given to you by your predecessors, those people that have given you their mātauranga, their knowledge. So I need to lead to all those people and to what they gave me, this nohi at the end of the chain. So the very first body that I got involved with, because I've been at the Māori Arts and Crafts Institute for 10 years, under John Taipa, I got approached to carve a whare in Rotorua called Te Waka Pikiao. And I approached my brother-in-law James Rickard, and the two of us carved that marae, fully carved it inside and out 2 years ago. That was my first foray into carving beyond the Māori Arts and Crafts Institute. So this whare to me represents, it's a snapshot of my learning through my training, and that's what I could achieve via my training. And it's what was, how do I put it, a whare should look like. The archetypal whare, that's what it should look like. The mahi, the amo, the mahau, the poho, everything is what you'd expect the whare to be in 1987 when I did that. So the next whare that I got involved in, I did the Te Waka in 89 after that. So that's a living, breathing, functional, form and function piece of art. That's also a waka or a taua that transports people from A to B as well. So it needs to perform on the water as well as perform visually. I mean, I don't know why I'm just blowing through things that took
Just before you blow through that, do you just want to talk a little bit about the process, like at what part you're engaged, the logs, etc. Just quickly.
So back in 1939, 38, Te Puia only had this moimua, this dream of a united Māori confederation going out, paddling out to the warships at Waitangi. And so that meant all the different iwi had to make a waka and paddle it out and show solidarity that we're still here, we're still a force to be reckoned with. But unfortunately the world wars got in the way. There was only one waka that got made, which was not Te Waka. Piri Pautapu was the main carver on that waka. And it's still the waka that's at Waitangi to this day. But because her dream wasn't realised, on the 150th anniversary of the Treaty of Waitangi, her dream was revived, and the call was put out for the different iwi to make waka. We were going to go to Waitangi in 1990. So if Te Arawa was going to get a waka, I was going to make it. There was just no questions, no buts or ifs. So I torn off a log out at a place called Tenaire, which is in the Whirinaki forest, and dragged those logs back to Rotorua, and I splice joined 3 pieces together to make the Waka Toi Award, and it took me a year to make it. So, very first waka I ever made, so there was a lot of guessing and a lot of figuring things out on the hop. But that waka still exists today. We took it out not so long ago. We had it at the Kapahaka regionals. We had it at Waitangi last year. So it's still getting used, and there's lots of lessons learned at that time about people wanting to make big, huge wakas down in Whangarā that haven't even made the water yet. To smaller waka that you can transport, that you can use, that are more accessible. That was the expression of where I was at in 1989.
But it floated.
It did.
How many people?
I did have a little bit of a long one there because we've been working on it non-stop for 9 months. And it was on a truck going down to the lake at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I thought to myself, what if we put it in the water and it goes to it flips over? And on the pole. And that was I thought that at that time at 4 in the morning I thought that, and when the waka hit the water it just sat beautiful. And
because it's all the centering as well, you know,
yeah.
there's so many things that
And
can go wrong in it.
it took about 28, if you put it in the sea, it rides higher. I think it took about 28 in the sea, and it's only a small waka, it's only 20 meters. And in the lake, depends on the size of your cohort, obviously. You've got some good units, well, you have less.
But its optimum is around 28 people.
No, its optimum is about 22. Yeah. And it's dried out a bit now, and then so it performs slightly differently than it used to. So there's all those things that the old people knew that we're finding out. Anyway, you know what. So when I was at the Wairiki at 1990, I was at Wairiki doing part-time tutorship there. I got asked to do ihina, the marae that was being considered at that time. And right at that site used to be a big, huge hill. And I said to the kaumātua, Hiko Hoeta, I said, hey, why don't we dig it into the hill? Wouldn't that be cool? We've already been to the architects, and the architects have already given us a design, and the architects gave us this box. And it's indicative of where we are as carvers nowadays, where European technique and bylaws, stipulations say you've got to have that amount of structural integrity and strength and blah, 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 blah. And so you get a box, you inherit a box, and then 3 years and 9 months later, that's what that box became. And it's all very pretty, and you know, I know every chip on that plate. But it's retrospective wallpaper. You know? And we say, oh, this is a popo. Well, a popo means to support something. It just is any part two. It's just hanging on the wall. And then you say, well, toko manawa. po, support, toko, prop, manoa, the heart, as was stated earlier, that's the heart of the tupuna. The tupuna is in that stance. It's a welcoming stance. Outstretched arms. The amos become the shins, it's like in that stance. But the po toko doesn't prop anything. So the names don't perform the function that they suggest. And then we have all this marvelous karakia and all the stuff in pomp and ceremony, and some of the fundamental components aren't doing the job that their name says it does. And we just have plain Māori here, are we? Are we just, what are we doing? Window dressing, retrospective wallpaper. So the next project that I got to do was in 2002-ish. Well, that's inside of Ihina, by the way. Sorry to be blabbering and talking. It's bringing up a lot of things in my mind now. And that there was a karaua, a kaumātua that was in charge of Waiariki, Honeti. His name was Toi Tauraganga Art. And I remember him and I talking. He was a mechanic, so him and I would talk about cars and things as well. He said to me, you're the carver, you get on and do what you do, and I'm the one that's in support of you, and I've got your back. And whatever you want to do on this whare, you do it. We're in an educational institution here, so you've got free rein to do what you want to do. And I'm going, that's the first time that someone said they respect what I want to do as a carver. Because I've been busy all this time, right up to this point. I'm doing what other people want me to do. That a whare nui should look like this. And then some of the karaus would come and say, oh, do it like your koro did it, boy. He was a famous carver, Te Tohu Toi Kē. Do it like he did it. And I'm going, oh, okay, because I'm just a nohinui. I think I'm 30 years old or 28 years old when I did that thing. And I do what I'm told, because I'm just a nohinui, right? I do what my karawas tell me to do. And my karawa will say, boy, you do it like you want to do it, and I'll back you. So he let the dog off the leash in a way. And so, if you look at the the back wall of the whare, it's actually a forestscape. It's trees. And it talks about when we were nature and nature was us. And we were seamless. And so that whole wall gets dedicated to one kaupapa, one take, which is about our connection with the taiao. And then some of the popo can be revisited, because I've got a really old popo in that house that was done in the 1890s by one of those men that was on that first list that I showed you, like Kōrero. And I got one of his carvings, because he could help me go and tono for it. And I got that carving, and I put that carving in this house. It was the very first act that I did to set the benchmark. And then anything I do from that point on is in respect of that carving. And so I'm thinking about things like, what would it be like for the first person that saw James Cook come over the horizon and go run and tell his whanaunga what he saw? That's that carving over there. And that he would have been fearful. It would have been like coming out of his imagination, because it's something like he'd never ever seen before. It's a monster. It's a bird with its wings, bellowing wings, flapping. He didn't know what it was, a floating island. So he's running to tell his whanaunga what he saw. He's the first eyewitness. So rather than portray, that's Tasman. So rather than portray Tasman in 1642 arriving, Tasman with a three-cornered hat, or what he would have had with his uniform, and in a very naive stance. I thought I'll do an eyewitness account of him. And that's how that popo became a bespoke, original piece for that marae, for that time, by me. And it's a departure from doing what I'm told to kind of doing what I'm told, but being naughty and doing what I want to do. The Potoko Mano is now Tangaroa, in reference to what was said about Ngāti Pupuke and Maurihi, Ngāti Pukenga. So Tangaroa was the obvious progenitor of carving, so he's the Potoko Mano of the house. And this is all my this one here. Now, if you think of those popos like was shown, what you do to make a carving, to give it relief or to give it mana, you push the background away, lower the background, and then the figure stands out on the carving. So what happens if you push in and actually push away from the, to create the form? So that's what this is about, pushing away rather than letting the carving stand out as you normally would do it in classical form. Pushing in and using indentation, like pushing your hand into the sand, let's say. But I mean, that whole house is just full of those sort of things, but it's just on my way to other things. So let's
before you go on your way, I just want to acknowledge it because you just said yourself, well, you've just shared with us the moment in which you took it to the next level. I just want to acknowledge because that full house is like that, every single pose, and obviously that takes a lot of thought and a lot of generation of ideas. So I just want to acknowledge that firstly. But secondly is like, how the hell? You know, how did you actually go, okay, I want to twist this waka, I want to, you know, because you've obviously got to master some kind of creative process to do that. You're not going to tell us all your secret, but what sort of creative process did you go through to mastermind something that was so far from?
Well, I quote Kung Fu Panda 3.
See that?
There is no secret sauce. I think there is, if you think about it, you go, well, there's ideas floating around in the ethos, and I think it's the same for any artist. They're floating by, and you know, tohunga, let's say that word tohunga, right? Tohu is a sign, tohunga is the agent of that sign, that maybe it's the antennas that you've got that allow you to, because tohunga is something above the mundane, right? Or you're just different, crazy, different, whatever. And those antenna allow you to pick up those ideas and bring them into the here and now. And just it's like, if that's me, I never thought about it, I'm privileged if it is.
Well, you also have to have a real authority over tools before you can start manipulating that.
That gets me to the Kōrero Ko.
Yes.
So the Kōrero is the esoteric, is those unthought of ideas, the ethos, and then the Kōrero is your ability to manipulate those materials. A chisel, kuruta, a toki, and what does the totara do when you hit it that way across the grain, or that way across the grain, or this way? And when those two are in sync, then you can actually speak, or you have command over your given discipline. And that's why the tongues stick out on the carving, because you've got that dexterity now. And some people hit it earlier, and some others of us hit it later. And you just got to hope that it hits you, because that's what you want as a carver, as a tambo artist, as any artist. You're craving for it. Oh yeah, then 19, what is it? 86. I did that for Sky City. And about 20 years later, they took it out and they dropped it and smashed it.
Oh, damn.
And then the convention centre, that's where it was going to, the new convention centre, and they said to me, you know, kei a koe, whakatika, you know, whakahe. So they said, you've got the option, do you want to take these 20 pieces and put it back together and paint? Well, that's all right. But if you want to create something brand new, that's all right what I do. And I thought, well, 70% of it's still there. Why can't I made it, so why can't I? And so I put it all back together again.
Wow.
And then COVID hit. And then they had that fire. And it sat in my shed and kept all my precious zephyrs outside for 6 years. It sat in my shed, but I made it. And it went in last year. It was October last year. And it just got unveiled February. So, and that was Martinez finest hour. So you cut it here.
Looks beautiful against Pikiao Larkin.
But what I like to think is that, yeah, it's a piece of art, a huge piece of art. Engari, but it's born of that first waka that I made. So it's got real waka technique and aesthetic and mana in it that makes it more than a piece of art.
Yeah.
Because it's based on kiko. Anyway, so Ngāku Mahaki. I mean, I'm super proud of this whare, of course. 8 years it took me to make it. And that was going out to the Ngāhere and getting logs out of the gullies, dragging them up out of the gullies, and getting them on trucks, taking them to, we took them to Lake Park. No, we took them to Kaingaroa. And I milled them with my Alaskan mill. And then drove all the rako to Tamaki Nakoda, to Auckland, where this house is. Adzed it, designed it, carved it, and made it into a whare. So it was 8 years. And even rather than waste all the little offcuts, I just made them into a patu over the house, to a leaf over the house. And made a couple of sons at the same time. So this, we're talking about those ideas again. So that whare is in a chronology, right? So now that the dog's off the leash, the dog can do anything. So I thought, why can't I make the whole house in a chronology? So it starts with Mairano, you know, Tainā Tiki Tēnera. And so I had this idea of these figures on the back wall, Tautoko Manoa figures, but they become the arai. And, you know, ki tō tarai, tā wairua. I tēnei tā, tā kiko. Tīmaka Kōrero, te whare. So from this side of the arai, because you know in oratory they'll say, you know, ahako wehi ki tō arai, ka mauma hara mātou iai. And so the arai is the veil between the spiritual and the living. And so I'm thinking to myself, so if I blow that up, we go beyond those figures, those are the tupuna ki tū o tarai. So then I thought, oh, that's when I went past the boat building department at Unitech, and they had this thing where they were putting fiberglass on boats, and they put the fiberglass on and they put a plastic bag over it, and then draw all the air out, and that would make the fiberglass sit down on the boat. And I thought, geez, why don't you do that with fire? And So I got one of Judy Robson Dean was the leader. She was amazing. And I got her to do a test piece. And yes, you can make them fit over those figures. And so I did a whole series of them, and they turned it into the art of the play. So ki toa karai. So, thank you, Hiko Hoefa, because if he didn't say that to me, I don't know whether this could exist. And I guess as you get older and more, you don't really care what people say or think about you, so you can just, gives you a bit more license to do whatever you want to do. And if I want to do that, you know, I'm privileged that I had the chance to do that.
Beautiful.
And of course, there's a story like that in each of the popo as it comes forward in the chronology, right to Api Haita Kawa Te Tawa and Toi Tauraganga Art in 1840. That's the middle of the whare. And so the whole Hautoko Manawa, which does prop the whare. So the fundamental thing about this whare is that the popo are popo. They actually do attach to the hekerangi, which attaches to the tāhuhu. So that's a structural member. And I remember starting to carve that house. I'd been carving for 3 years on that house, and people would ask, when you started the marae? I said, we've been doing 3 years, but there's nothing there. So people used to see the box arrive at the thing, and then we put stuff on the box. And I said, we're making every 4x10, we're carving it. You can't go to placemakers and get it off. And so it was a shift, a shift in perception about how a whare should be. Well, it was a shift back to how the old people do. And I've got a PowerPoint about this whole whare, and I found a picture of Whakaurangi in 1933 being refurbished. And props and stuff in there. Propped up the tāhuhu of the thing, and then I've faded into us doing our houses got cranes and well, it's the same thing, but only removed 100 years. So, and then 2004, while I was in that money, we went to England and did the Chelsea Flower Show. And that was literally a slice of Aotearoa. And I guess it's carving, right? No matter what you do, no matter what you put your hand to, it's carving. So I carved that taniwha. And his tail starts up in the half out here, and the hot water solution down his back, and then he goes into a sparkle. So it's literally a slice of Aotearoa, and it's a slice of the fauna and flora and a cultural slice, and it's the garden of the Patupai. So if the kohu was to lift, this is the mahi that you would see that they did. And it was interesting that the Queen saw that, because the BBC sent over a team to film us building it. And she got wind of it, and she ordered every piece of information about this garden, and she came especially to see it. Sadly, we were at the pub that day, so missed it. But they got a gold medal. They got a gold medal, and we had to get all those pumas and everything from Ngāti and Rotorua, get them over there to England, and make them look like they're loving it. Because it's totally 6 months out of sync for them to flower, and so everything was 6 months out of that. So, anyway. These are just pieces that I did down at the lakefront that, aren't you supposed to be asking me questions?
You said the work talks for itself.
So these these tall figures I did down at the redevelopment at the Rotorua lakefront, and they're called po tumu. Now these tumu used to stand in the lake, in the shallows of the lake, and they were like aukati, they were like family, belonged to each whānau group, iwi groups. Where you tie your waka there, you could go and get your kākahi there, or kauras or whatever. And they were like aukati demarcations of different areas. So I took that concept and bought those po. There was hundreds of them around the edge of the lake. And I bought them back onto the land. And then did them in a triptych so that you get the male, female, and the child, which is a whānau group. But which allows a different positioning as well when there's a triptych. So, and there's 3 groups of them. So the first group is carved, which is this group, I think, yeah. And then that's Marauma, the old days. And then the ones that are made out of aluminium is the Ienera, these times. And then Te Waka Toi Kē is the other group made out of stainless steel. So there's a whole lot of where I've integrated 3D scanning and file manipulation, slicing up objects in 3D, STL files and slicing them up, and then reconstituting them. So there's a lot of sort of modern, there's chisel work, and there's laser cutting and water jet cutting and TIG welding and all sorts of stuff in those. To create those entities. But they're also all looking after the island, where my great-grandmother and her mother are buried out on Mokuia, on Whakairo and Wahanga. So the thing is that the story that created those pieces is real, and I actually found a map that Gilbert Mayer had presented to the Māori Land Court that had all the names of those po on it, every one. And so the middle set that are made out of stainless aluminium, I've cut all those names out and added them as the visual information that's on the surfaces of those pieces, so that they'll never be forgotten. And we fortuitously found that map. And those are those sort of things that you hope that good ideas come to you as an artist. You pray that they come to you, and sometimes you don't quite. But other times a map comes and it's got all the names of those 2 on it. Yeah.
So just a question, Lyonel. At what point were you, or do you use your own computer technology or manipulation in your work? It's more and more now, actually. Although, having said that, this morning I just came off the chisel. This is right hand, chisel, mallet, swearing. You can swear at the computer as well.
That's special swearing. But I like to think that I'm in control of it and it ain't in control of me. Because I've thought about it as well, and that about the first carvers that were here when say Cook turned up, and they're working away with their kohatu or green timber, and then they get handed an adze, steel, and that all goes, oh, okay, I'll try it. The second cut, he knows that is superior to what he was using. As much as he loves those old stone adzes, that steel one is superior because it can cut deeper, can cut quicker, more keenly. He can do more in a day than he ever could with the stone. And so from that prior learning, he knows that is a superior thing. And that this old board is going to be ceremonial. I might use it for the first cut on a carving knife, but after that. And so I'd like to think that if you wind the years forward now, that everything that I learned at the Māori Arts and Crafts through all those maraes that I did. And if I program something on a computer, that prior knowledge that I attained early in my career, that informs what I do on the computer. So the lines and the shapes that I create on the computer are from that, and not
Can't do it the other way around.
not the other way around. Yeah. Not like, oh, I can go into a catalogue on the net and get a shape of something and bring it in to do with it. But it's not my shape. The shapes I create are my own, based on what I've learned. Anyway, so this is the last play that I carved or created. And I called it Toi Mairire, and these boys picked up on the timely, because Yatua Toi Mairire is the karakia that was brought back to Tainu by Pikiao, and with a name change by the way. And so how did it come to be? It's in a college over in Olympia, in Washington State, just south of Seattle. And it was designed to be, to support an Indigenous arts degree. And so it's a whariraranga, it's a reading studio. And my idea was to have the homie joint that you have on a waka, because I can. And you got and you have a skylight in there that lets the light in. And the two sections holds of the waka are the two peoples, Māori and Pāpahenui. So, and together they make the one building, the one waka. And waka is part of their culture as well, so there was a lovely fit. And then I started just appropriating a lot of their styles and techniques, and then I created a whole carving suite of designs and things like Māori-esque, based around their designs. And then I had 2 or 3 other of the local carvers working on the other end. And we created a Maiti and an amo for their end as well. Toi Mairire came when the last month before the opening, I flew over from Aotearoa, got there, then I get a call that my daughter was in intensive care. And I said, I'm coming home. And they said, yep, we'll book your ticket now. And then I got a call in the morning that she'd been moved out of intensive care into the wards. And I talked to her. And I said, I'm coming home, girl. And she said, no, you stay there, Dad, and you finish that. And she said, you sure? Yep. And then the organizer said to me, oh, we're trying to think what we want to call the play. So her middle name is Toi Mairire, and it's Toi Mairire. Nia Kayla Toi Mairire is her name. So this is an animation actually, but it wouldn't translate onto this version of PowerPoint for some reason. So it actually spins, and then you can actually go inside and just sketch up.
That's why we couldn't make it work.
Yeah. So from that original drawing to the construction phase, but pinching their designs was cool. Really it was just great because you're doing stuff that you wouldn't normally do. And then I asked them for some of their whakatauaki there, because I had whakatauki on our side. And then I asked them if they got any, and they said, yes, we do. I said, have you got it in your rero? No, they didn't have it in their own language. So I had to write them in English, they think. So when the tide goes out, the table set, when the tide comes in, it's kaipang, can feed our visitors. But, yep, and I've seen a picture of this with snow all over it too. So, I didn't even know what to put down on all this, so I started to think of the figures that I've carved over the years. So, of course, that was Ihenga. On the far, that's at the British Museum, that one there. And then, of course, this is in Nakamahaki, the one with the woven wall. And the tūpuna's name is Tikahi. And collectively, all the marae, all the puke, all the maunga in Tamaki Makaurau are called Whakairo Ko. And as luck would have it, I found a topographical map on Maunga Ko. And I could see a torso, and I could see, so I just took it and made up the arms and the legs. But, and they call it the poho matomo, even the crater is, you know, the road comes up here, you know, it goes into a tree up there somewhere. So I literally carved that topographical map to create the topo. So, that's when Delicia's laid off, that's what happens. What do we got? So that there is Te Tohu Pia. He was the man that founded my grandmother and his namesake. My grandmother's brother was Te Tohu Pia. Yeah, Te Tohu Fraser. And the Carver founded my grandmother and her brother, his namesake. So Te Papa asked if I could do a popo for them, and initially I said no, because I says, now, would you ask Shane Cotton to do, would you be prescriptive and say, oh, we want a popo this big, this wide, this? I said, no, you wouldn't. You would say, Shane, make us a painting. So why don't you say, why not make us a carving? And for some reason, there's a gap in our collection, we really want this one. So I relented, and I decided to do this popo of the man that brought up my grandmother, who was a carver. And then I added my own references of my own practice into that popo, right? So you can see the moko in the eyes of that. That was one of his signature things, was using moko in his carving. So Te Tohu Pia would do that. So if you go to a house called Whakairo, down at Tapu Waikura Hatupatu, you'll see the amos of the marae. There's the mokos, there's eyes on the amo. So I took that idea and just sort of played it up a bit. And there's his mother and his father up above to his right and left. And then you get the whakapapa aho that comes off the tongue, goes down through John Taipa, who's the one on the puku of the whige. And it comes down to my grandmother. And she always used to use wear that peka that couldn't play on thing around her neck. So that's literally her. And then he's holding the kurita, the mallet, the round mallet. And we go back to that very first Makapihi of the only meeting house. Paki Harrison come to visit me there. And he says, hey, I got this for you. He gave me that mallet. And it was round. And because of all the carving, every time we come out of the Institute, we'd had square mallets. And carvers out of the Institute would always have square mallets. And I thought, how can the round mallet hit the end of a little chisel without slipping off and whacking your hand? They can't be. So I just chucked it in the toolkit. Said, I never touched it. And then I ended up smashing my square one. And I was working on the potunaro of the whare at Mokpio, and I had no mallet. Grab Paki's mallet, and I've never ever stopped using round mallets. And that's a little tribute to that. And the chisel came from a man called Hori Emery. And that's another long-winded story that I won't bore you with, but I ended up with his chisels. And so that's literally one of Hori Emery's chisels in his hand. And it's got HH, which is his tohu, on the file. So all those little things are like, I even put Roger Nish in there too. You're a Roger. So yeah, it's a pogo, yep. And it's a carved Maori popo, yep. But it's got all these hidden references and tohu and their personal things that made it what it is. And I'm sure that's how that for the Meihana, that's what makes his what it is, because he's putting his money into it. This one is at the Auckland Zoo. It's in the aviary. Carved out up north. And this is another one of our popos in the meeting house with the woven ball. And this guy's a guy called Rolf Hathaway. And how's that a Māori popo? But it is, somehow it is. He was brought up in Auckland with his family, then moved to Australia. He did a bit of art training in his younger years. They moved to Australia and he got beat up in a fight and brain damaged. So the father and two of the brothers brought him back and had him committed at Carrington Mental Institution, which is Unitec now, where the family is. And so I thought, self, wouldn't he be a great popo to be in the house? Well, that was right from that land. And even though they said he was, Kuwait, but it turns out that Theo Schoon was moonlighting as an orderly there while he was studying. So, and then Theo Schoon notices this guy going outside and getting onto the exercise area with a piece of clay. Yeah, making these huge drawings all over the thing. Something to that. So what he did, they'd come and hose it off every evening. And then, so he gave him a scrapbook and pencils. And he started doing all his drawings in a scrapbook. And that scrapbook was used by Damien Skinner to do a show called Between Modernism and Madness. And I got the brochure with some of the drawings in it. And that head is Rob Hathaway's head, but it's a thumbnail in the bottom of the page, very small. So I blew it up. And then I used some of the buildings at Unitec, the old 1860s buildings and the plumbing on the outside of the buildings and stuff. And then had these series of windows that you can see into his world. But it's also as he saw the world through those windows, And that's literally Theo Schoon, a copy of Theo Schoon's piece. And Theo Schoon was with Gordon Walters at the time. So both Schoon and Walters used imagery that they saw in that scrapbook for their own work. And that's what spawned that show Between Modernism and Madness. Was all three artists were featured. But anyway, while I was carving it, it was one of those sort of the knot blew through in that part of the carving. There was a kanohi there, like a knot in the wood. And when I was carving it, popped out. And then a few weeks earlier, I'd been up into one of the old buildings at Unitec, and they had these holes up on the top of the wall. So you walk in, and the main art hallway, and there's these I managed to have a cork in it. And before CCTV, they get up and they look into the room and see that the patient is still kicking, and then, oh yeah, that's not okay, and then plug it up. And it made me think, then that popped out. So what I did is I made a diorama of a room that he would have been in. And then if you get down and you look through that wide angle lens, it's looking into a room, and I used LED lights and stuff to illuminate the room. And it's literally a room that he would have existed in back in the day when it was a mental institution.
Wow.
So it's carving bricks. Then I figure back to Nakamaki.
Straightforward.
All the secrets. Go back to Nakamaki. See that. There it is. See the tip of the on top there? So I took a mold of that because that's cast in bronze. And the whole Hayafa is cast in bronze. So you go forward. 2, oops, oops, good. So that's that figure there. But all I did was add, so if we're talking 3D, if we're talking manipulation via virtual manipulation, that'd be like displacement mapping. But what I do is I actually place that information onto the wax, the main wax that I get. I place that information on and build the compositions bespoke for each figure, and then cast it. So that's at the museum in Cambridge Museum. It's a Cambridge museum. This one here, now I noticed we were talking about Wēnaka the other presentation, and Wēnaka was found in a waterway in the lake, and I got asked to do a piece for Tainui, and so the first thing I did was a figure, full figure with all the takarangi, all the whakaris and stuff all over it, very fine, and I was getting ready to go and see the Toi Kē that were going to say yes or no to the job. So, group of elders. And when I was making the small maquette to show them, I was casting it in bronze. And so I got the mold, I poured the hot wax in, and there was a lot of bubbles in the wax, and when I pulled the figure out the wax to get ready to cast it, it would have a whole lot of air bubbles. So and put it back into the hot wax, and when I pulled it out, it became that. And I looked at that, and I looked at the one that I was going to cast, and I said, oh, you've already done it. But then I had to go and talk to that group of elders who I know would have wanted the piece ripped up. And all the usual stuff, what they wanted to see. And at the doorway, I had both of them in my hand to go and do the presentation, and I left that one at the doorway and I put that one in, and it became the piece at Wāhi at Huntley.
Nice.
So it's 6 meters high.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it. Right?
Wow.
And so you know, just playing around with 3D imagery and stuff like that, and that you know, every shape the computer recognizes the polygons, you know, all this stuff. And instead of having a polygon can look like a cut diamond, so that if I was to get the computer to say 3 million polygons would make that, you could reproduce it. And if you go in really, really, really close, it looks like a cut diamond. Everything is. And then you can say to the computer, well, I don't want 3 million, I want 300. So if the shape is a figure, you can do 300 polygons, and instead of having it as a solid object, you make each convergence of the polygons a plank or a shaft, and you can create the shape. So there was a tutu on the way to other things. That's green stone. So the stone called travertine stone. Just playing with form, playing with shapes, creating a figure, but trying to think of it in a different way or reinvent it. So I think there's another one coming. So I'm coming unstuck here. Bear with me. That one. So that's using displacement mapping that one there. So you can get a 3D form, and then you can say, I want to import a sax, and then I want to bend this guy back a bit. I want to puff his cheeks out, and I'll put one leg forward, one leg back like he's going for that note. And then I can create a tickle that's playing the saxophone. I've 3D printed that one. So it's a lot of these things can exist in virtual space and you never ever make them. You know? But sometimes it's cool to actually bring them to life, and that you can actually hold that and go, whoa. So I call them the busker. You know. The other one there is called Half Breed, the one on the end, where Dempsey Bob gave me this piece of wax. And like, you know, when I was mucking around, that's the figure I was mucking around with when it didn't cast. So I snapped the head off one, and then I found Dempsey's head from the northwest coast up in Vancouver, and I put that onto my figure and called it Half Breed. Cast that in bronze too. Because that's the other way you can, instead of manipulating things in 3D and being happy with it and then printing it, you can get the wax and you can snap an arm off and change where it goes, and you can like manually articulate the piece. And this one is just that slicing thing where you slice something up and you're actually seeing the empty space within. There's about 35 slices. And you just take out the piece you get the laser to cut each slice, and then when you stack them back together, the piece that you've taken out, you can still read it as a figure. Yeah, everybody does that. This was for that movie, Chief of War, where I was asked to reproduce 1790s Hawaiian figures for a movie, and to carve them in real time. And to me, that was inspired, because normally in the movies they say make them out of polystyrene, and you get these ugly tiki bar bloody things that are ugly, you know. But they said they wanted bespoke carved heiau images, which is temple images. And
So you're in the movie, right?
Oh, my credits are in
You're
all
not
3
there.
seconds of it.
Yeah.
My son was a stunty for it. Yeah. Oh, there's those better shots of those figures. No, well,
How tall is that?
the tallest is 6.5 to the tallest. So they're quite striking and prominent, and they're lit. Of course, they're internally lit, except those ones which are solid. But being triptych, you can alter shapes. I wanted to put a set out in the lake, but guess you ran out of food. And this is kind of one of the last things I've been mucking around with. And how could I use traditional patterns that I have done all of my life and reorientate them to do something else? It's still that traditional technique. Pakati, these are Zikuawa pakatis, like we do from Ngāti, but how can I change it and make it and then to configure it in a new way? And you know, you could just say, oh, that's the way, or you know, or Te Tāwhiwao. Doesn't matter what you call it, but what it is a stride away from taking those traditional iconography and reinventing it, but still keeping the integrity. That is the truth. So one of the last things that I'd like to say, you know, rather long or so long, is that I'd like to be able to make a piece and say like one of those figures, and then place it in a gallery in Paris, and then all the art people will come along and say, it's obviously a figure, but it's not Ghanaian, it's not Aboriginal, it's not Rotorua, it's not Māori, because it hasn't got any pakatis on it, or it hasn't got a tongue sticking, it's not painted red, it hasn't got any powershell eyes. But you actually making a language that's a universal art, international language, born of our culture. It's not identifiably our culture, but it is born very much of our culture. So that you can make something that confounds all the experts that don't know where it came from. I'd like to be able to make that jump. Anyway.
So I'm just gonna just highlight something we talked about at lunchtime. In terms of, we're always reaching back. We've had to reach back to figure out what the rules are, I guess. The pukinga comes from reaching back. So now that you've been doing this for 50 years and you've created, like, if people went into one of your wharenui and they tried to label everything, they'd recognise, like you say, they'd recognise some of the things. But there's things in there that they wouldn't recognise. How important do you think it is that they, that you start giving language to things that you've uniquely created, so that people don't call them Western, they call them Māori, they've come from Lyonel, they're your style, but to give them names and to make sure they're grounded as Māori, not, he was influenced by Western thought, because I don't really believe in that.
I think by inference, the volume of work that you do, its pedigree, is that process by where Te Toi Whakairo Ko, we it's got total integrity, you get respect, and you get recognition, because if it's done with integrity, then it'll command that respect. And maybe it's my job to take all that stuff from the past, the wicked stuff, and wrap it up somehow and turn it into that. And that's our job now. And not just reproducing another Rotorua popo, not reproducing another Whakairo Ko. And I can, if I want to, I can copy one faithfully so that it looks a lot like what Rotorua did. But that's Rotorua, not me. And
so I guess you kind of answered it in a way, because when you traverse that part, when you're creating, you're going to do it, where you create something that's inherently Māori but not recognisable, there will be a Lyonel Grant.
Yeah, and you don't need to label it, right?
No.
It should be what it is. And you can't try too hard. Yes, that's not it either. So I guess after all these years of doing that, I'm still in a quandary of where the hell to go and what to do. But
take some good photos, Lionel. That's a start.
Lonnie's just pushed on the internet.
Has anyone got some questions for Lionel? Because we're a little bit over time, but I'm sure someone must have some burning questions. Overload.
What's your whakaaro on the whole idea? Because I guess for me as a Māori, but what I'm trying to do with my Māori toi is whakamoana te, in terms of bringing my, celebrating or reflecting my connection to Moana Nui a toi, being from Rotorua and Matakana Island. While I'm driving, I see beautiful things, the school of Mau, Iko Mau, all that sort of stuff. While I'm at the beach at Papamoa, I'll see the footprints of the Kōrero, and I see these things, I see an opportunity to be able to create surface patterns that are unique to me as well, that tell the story of Kōrero Inu Tai, and Pikiao, all that sort of stuff. So it's not just a generic Māori pattern, but for me it's, I'm just quite excited about the idea of localizing or kind of whakamoana te, just to celebrate our intimate connections with our own roki, with our own moana, our experiences, the experiences that have been shared with our parents, our koa, our kuia, all that sort of stuff. And, but have you kind of ventured down that path too, and how have you sort of navigated that?
Although I've been heavily influenced by my training and things, so I'm sort of reinventing what I was trained to do. But I think the fundamental is cool, that if you're totally sincere about what you're doing, it will come through your work. But if you just want to be a plastic Māori, it will come through your work as well. And that's one worry about computerization. It can lead you around by the nose, and you can lose sight of, especially you be in control of it and don't really be in control of you. But that's totally about taking stuff from your IL, because no one can take that from you. And you know that more intimately than anybody else, so that's fine. And yeah, and the more you frequent that place, the better.
I say because I just carved a mega spear gun out of like Māori and all that. So I'm not playing in there, so we ran on there too, but I shot a kingfish this Monday, first one on all that sort of thing. But for me, I guess another aspect of Toi Māori is it's not just hanging on the wall, it's actually giving and keeping time, and that sort of thing too. But it's also weaving connection to the moana, being able to give some of the kingfish to kaua, kuia, all that sort of stuff, and Māori ake nei te rā. Yeah, so I don't know, I love this idea of play too, like the whole what it play is.
Because we're not allowed to play, right? It's all deadly serious.
Deadly serious.
So we have a big, tell what the whakatanginga name on it. And we get corralled into it as artists. And sometimes, because we're we're just still too young, and the Kōrero says, do it, and you do it. And then it comes a time when you... So yeah, sorry it's been so dyslexic, the whole bloody thing. Maybe I am dyslexic.
Anyone else got a question? Otherwise, yeah, no? Sure, Lyonel will be partial to a couple of questions at the end. We're finished. Well, Lyonel, it's been an absolute pleasure. I feel honoured that you've taken time from your file. And yeah, that we've basically had a survey of your career and some secrets and some visions. So I feel like we got way more of a treat than we were expecting. So I'd like to thank you warmly for that for us today. Kia ora. Yeah, for sure.